Hey guys, CJ. So I wanted to keep up the content train, keep her rolling out of the station. I just ate like a ginormous amount of rice, vegetables, and like 3/4 of a pork tenderloin, and I am fitting to burst. But what's also fitting to burst, honestly, is Mouz, Spirit, and Liquid. Now, these teams, what do they have in common? In reality, nothing really. In the micro sense, I think that there are teams that are all struggling for identity and struggling to find form right now within top tier Counterstrike. Liquid, starting at the bottom, has been struggling for many, many, many years. They're just higher profile, unlike Astralis, who has somehow managed to claw their way back up to relevancy. Liquid, as my past rant video, which was really funny how well it did for it just me being like 3 beers deep after happy hour and going on a rant about how shit Liquid is. Liquid, with this current trade that they made for Malbs in the place of Nerds, I think is interesting. But I think the primary problem that you're going to run into with this squad, while it does make more sense in terms of roles as Malbs is a true pointy stick, making more space for the rest of the team, I think Shuhei has really either had his voice overwritten or is just failing to live up to the potential that we have seen out of him. And I think Malbs, one of the biggest problems that he had during the end of his time in G2 was that he had confidence issues. Social media really got to him, and I love Mouz as a player. I have nothing but the utmost respect for him. So my concern comes from the fact that his confidence was somewhat eroded within G2. He was then traded to Liquid, and the idea is that it's supposed to be a new change of scenery. He's supposed to refresh himself, get that confidence back, and do the best he can. Well, if there's anything we know about Team Liquid, is that it's not exactly a picture-esque place of mental health and positivity. So I think for someone who's already in a bit of a, I'm not going to say crisis because he's not like sub 1 point. He's not egregiously bad, but Liquid has been known as this place that people have come to, people have underperformed, and then they go on to do bigger and better things. It has chewed up and spat out talent for a number of years now since their peak. And I know the last time I did the video, someone mentioned that they made a grand final in 2023, I think it is. Someone corrected me on that. But just they've never really been able to regain any form of stability. And I think we're, even as stated by Elige in the recent interview, they were lucky to make the major. They didn't make the major, if you want to, okay, there's two ways to approach how you could phrase this. They made the major through their own efforts. Yippee. Technically, by playing the games they played and doing what they did, it was enough to qualify them for the major. The uncharitable way of looking at it is that they had to rely on other teams failing in order to make it to the major. And I don't mean they had to rely on teams that they played to fail. After they played their last games that were in the qualifying period for the major, they had a potential chance of being knocked down due to the success of other teams who still had games to play and tournaments to play. They were done. They decided they weren't going to play anything else. They're going to use that time to boot camp, get ready for the major. I don't know. But all those teams could have absolutely taken Liquid's major spot away from them if they had performed slightly better. And they fumbled the bag. Liquid gets in at the absolute bottom of the barrel of the North American VRS rankings. And now they don't have to face the consequences of their actions. And even, like I said in that interview, even the team is aware that they didn't really earn this. They didn't do great. They're only really there by almost, not pity, but they're only there by luck, not by skill. And so I think that, we've saw FaZe finally blow up after, after a truly catastrophic season. And someone else said it on social media. I was just a generic Reddit user, but a statement truly does sort of ring true. And I would feel horrible about this because Elige is one of my favorite players of all time. Malbs, I like him quite a lot. Naf, I think, has been looking for the door for over a year, despite him still being pretty okay. I wish Liquid hadn't made the major. I wish they would have had to blow up just like FaZe. I wish that they had, even after going through all this desperation to switch from EU to NA and bring Malbs in, which this would have sucked horribly for Malbs specifically. I wish they hadn't made the major. I wish that they had to sit this one out, take a good hard look at themselves, and realize that there are some systemic changes that are necessary within this team. Moving on to Spirit. Spirit, unfortunately, is on the opposite end of the spectrum, somewhat in that they have all the star players they need in theory. They have Shiro, he's getting up there. He's an Opper. Oppers, need to be, I'm not going to say young and virile, even though I just did, but Shiro is still a world-class Opper. He doesn't take as many attempts as everyone else in his same category, but he hits his shots. He is reliable. He is a perfect counterbalance to the aggression of Donk. And Donk had one of his worst series. He had his worst series ever, actually. I think it was today. And, I have faith in Donk, whatever. It's one series. He'll always bounce back until he doesn't, but he can do what he needs to do in order to be successful. And the real concern comes down to the leadership by Magix and how quickly Hallie can really get him online. And what I was really, really, really hoping is with I Am Rio going on and Hallie, unfortunately, being out due to health issues, we wish him obviously a speedy recovery and hopefully it's nothing serious. Magix has stated in interviews that he has to step up and do more. He has to be a little bit of what Hallie has to be. And forgive me, he has to do what Hallie sort of does in some ways. And I was hoping that this increase in pressure will lead to a better result for Spirit overall. And they opened up the tournament looking rather strong. But, like I said, Donk posted his career worst map, I'm pretty sure, today. Goodness. And if it's not enough, if it's too much pressure on him, then I do hope that after this event, Magix really does have a self-reflective moment to understand what he needs to be doing in place of what he was not doing before, as he's lucky that he gets all this time to develop. Not everyone would get this much time to develop as an IGL. It took Apex a long time, and they were not great for a lot of that time. He was just lucky that ZywOo loved to be in Vitality. He was happy having a lackluster trophy cabinet. Donk has his major. He has his Katowice. He has what he needs in theory to start his resume. But a player of his caliber in the prime of his youth I don't think should be willing to sacrifice this much time to develop an IGL. He could go somewhere else. Hell, he could go somewhere else and come back when Magix is a great IGL. He doesn't have to stay in Spirit, but he seemingly wants to. And I think that's going to hold Spirit back. When it came to the VRS rankings for this major, I am 99% sure they were just on the edge, of that, top group. Yeah, they were number 11 or 12 when it came to they made stage 2. They did not make stage 3. And I think that is an accurate reflection of how they've performed over the course of this year. And we have not really seen them trend up. I was a defender / excited individual of the move of Magix going to IGL as well as Tanir coming in, because I thought Tanir during his time on Heroic showed us some pretty great things and showed us that he was a quality talent. And if you could make this much firepower work, this would have been a veritable, youth-based, not super team. I don't want Austin to jump on me, but it would have been an incredibly powerful team, and they just seem to still be struggling to make it work. And if if there is not I get that they're in stage 2, so whatever, they're very close. But if they don't make major playoffs, I would not be surprised if we see further roster moves coming down from this team. And finally, Mouz, just to ramble about Mouz. Mouz have been your perennial baby brother to whoever is the best team in the world. They have the pieces to compete at the top. They do not have the pieces to win at the top. And I think that is their biggest concern and the biggest difficulty in attempting to replace anyone. Because how do you replace anyone in a team such as this? My big calls that I've made is that, I think Exertion could potentially be swapped out for someone better. I know that I've also been a proponent of Frozen to Na'Vi for a long time, but Na'Vi are being stable and competitive, and I don't know if Frozen over Eam would truly give them that next level, but maybe he goes back to Mouz. Maybe he takes Exertion's place, outperforms him because, he's freaking amazing. And that's what they need to hit that next level. That or an IGL change I know has been talked about for a while. There was that rumor flying around that Magisk was going to come in IGL for them. And I'm not the biggest hater of Brolin in the world, but he wasn't an IGL before doing this for Mouz. So making another gamble on an IGL type or someone you could develop would be interesting. But Mouz is stagnated. You know, if it is a top tier tournament with every single top, like all the big top 5 teams, top 8 teams in attendance, and Mouz makes it to playoffs, you can guarantee they will lose in semis. Pretty much every time. You can set your watch to that. And I've set my watch to it many times with predictions that I have made. And you've changed out pieces a number of times, and how long until Jimmy goes somewhere else? How long until this team gets plucked apart? I know Sphinx is happy doing what he wants to do, but maybe Sphinx could still go somewhere else. This dude's a major winning rifler. He could do it. He could go somewhere else. And he's put up fantastic numbers in the Mouz jersey. He has shown a great account of himself. So how long is second place or 4th/3rd place? And now that we have a third place decider coming up at the major, it can be extra insulting for some results for top 4. But how long is the bronze medal enough? How long is not medaling enough for a team that's just on the cusp? Are they just going to attempt to ride it out and try to wait for Vitality to fall and wait for them to get worse just so they can pounce? Or are they going to try and do something? Because I have a very high opinion of Cyclone, and I have a very high opinion of Xyp9x, who is his assistant coach. And if they can't get the choking out of them, if Xyp9x can't get the choking out of you, I'm not really sure who can. And maybe you need a change in the constellation of constellation of players that you have. But these are just 3 teams that I think are concerning inside the top 10, let's say, top 11, with, Spirit just being on that little, or not even top 10. What am I saying? I talked about Liquid. That's just, disregard that entirely. Just disregard what I just said entirely. But these are some teams in World Counterstrike that I'm concerned about in a different way, because especially with Mouz and Spirit, if you look at the top 10, a lot of these teams are lacking in different ways. And something that I, talked about in my Vitality is Alone at the Top video, there's so many imperfect teams in Counterstrike right now comparatively to the perfect team that is Vitality. And, with also the rumor that Woxic could be going to Aurora, I don't know what they would do there. Maybe they would stick with the Turkish squad and, bring in a new opper. I would personally love to see, here's my other random shout out, and I said this like 2 years, maybe 2 years ago, last year. I said this last year, just before Austin. I think Wacadia could go somewhere. I think Wacadia could go somewhere fantastic. I think he could slot into another team and do really, really, really well, because he is basically a junior Zontaris. And that's pretty damn good if you're going to be a junior of anything. A junior Zontaris who has to somewhat shore up his decision-making, but maybe in a better system, he can be accounted for, and that can be helped trained out of him. I didn't include Aurora because I didn't want the Turkish fans jumping down my throat, because obviously I have so much reach and so many viewers. Yes, just kidding. Shout out to everyone who watches consistently. Love you guys. Appreciate it very much. But I'm keeping up the content daily for a bit while I have the energy. I'm keeping up with my physical exercise, my job, my eating. I'm doing lots of stuff, and I keep wanting to talk about Counter-Strike. Reminder that I will be in attendance for Blast Dallas-Fort Worth, and I am planning also on attending the Fragadelphia St. Louis that was announced pretty recently, because I can finally drive to a Fragadelphia, because obviously I lived on the East Coast and was a broke baby boy, but now that I had to move away from the East Coast to not be a broke baby boy, obviously all the Fragadelphias are far away, and I can't just go because I have like 5 weddings this year that I have to go to. But you don't care about that. You care about Counter-Strike. And thank you for listening about Counter-Strike. Are there any teams that you guys are genuinely concerned about that you think are just kind of skating by or are in desperate need of a change, or are there just some red flag that you see rising in the horizon that maybe we all don't see yet? let me know down below. I have been CJ. Thanks for watching.